Um, so I wanted to make a video about this because it's like, yeah, one of the most common things for the longest time is to be able, common knowledge, to be able to know whether you were asleep or awake, to differentiate, was to just follow this advice, look down. If you happen to come across a clock, look at the time, and then look away, or you can do something, well, this is in during lucid dreaming, mind you. You have to know what lucid dreaming is. It just means like you can train yourself to basically have some sort of agency in your dreams. Some people are better at this than others, but it's basically called lucid dreaming. Okay, so yes, back to the time. You look at the time. It'll be different both times. It'll be it's usually radically different when you first start understanding what dreams are. Maybe you can change it to be more in line with reality. And then you can basically, some people are so good at it, I think they can actually act out in their dreams. And that might be also what kind of sleepwalking is to some extent. But, yeah. Well, what you're supposed to have is you're supposed to have something that turns off your brain, or turns off your ability to move when you are sleeping. And then this, sometimes you may wake up, but that ability is still turned off. I forgot what the exact terminology for it was. And this might cause this phenomenon known as sleep paralysis, where you're still like partially dreaming, but you're awake. And people always joke and make memes about saying, "Oh, my sleep paralysis demon," or whatever, which is just basically they're coming into wakefulness, into consciousness again, and they're still dreaming, halfway dreaming. So they're going to get psyched out during this rough transition, and they may see shadows and incorrectly assume it's some sort of being of some sort. But really, what's happening is it's just like you're not understanding the full context. So, when you wake from your dream, you might see that you're a chair with some pile of clothes stacked on it, and that's what you thought was looking at you. And then you're like, oh wait, oh, okay, good. It's just my chair with, clothes stacked on it. I'm saying that's what sleep paralysis can be. And it's similar to the feeling of having a dream and acting out up to a certain point. Like I would used to have dreams of getting ready to go to school, to be honest. And when I was younger, and it's like I would get all the way to the door, or get all the way up to putting my shoes on, and then I would wake up, and then I'd be like, oh my gosh, I have to do it all over again. And then sometimes that would be in a loop too, and that's just how that was. But yeah, so yes, that's a great way to tell between wakefulness and dreaming, is just to look at time, because time moves. It seems to move so fast. Your perception of time doesn't seem to stay, I would say, linear from your perspective when you're dreaming. It doesn't seem that way. Let me put it that way. Because you're like, well, how do these times make sense? And then even then you could ask yourself, well, what time is it, AM or PM? And even if you distinguish that, it doesn't show you, it doesn't talk about how many days it's been in between the last time you looked. There's no context in dreams, really. Your brain is just left to try to piece together some sort of context so that when it wakes up, it can make sense of what happened to some extent and retell the story. Okay, so this is what happened, and I saw this, and I'm saying a lot of people have dream catchers, or they write their in dream books or whatever, which can kind of appear like diaries of some sort. So, yep, that's what that is. So I'm saying, some people might wonder where we go when we go to sleep. It's just we slip into a lower state of consciousness. So if we're third dimensional beings, if you would define it like that, if I say, then you're simply going into second dimensional understanding while keeping your third dimensionality to you, your third dimensional form to you. Right? Do you understand what I'm saying? Okay. So once you understand that, basically REM, sleep, dreaming, or they say maybe you don't dream during REM. I don't know what the distinction is. All I know is that there's a certain period that is critical for you to go through. You go through several stages when you sleep. But essentially it helps with free radical flushing, so you don't, I guess, suffer the cascading of all these free radicals. That's what makes you feel like crap. You know what I'm talking about if you've ever felt like crap. Like just after a long night or something. You're just like, you stay up, but you're not like really doing anything. I don't know. For me, I'm just a person that always keeps moving. Always tries to stay active. I read this one book about this guy who had ALS. Yes. And then a word of advice he gave is, when you're in bed, you're dead, is what he said. And I tend to agree with that. It just makes sense to me. If you're not in action, then you're not in action. There is a paradoxical explanation for how inaction can still be action. It's that information itself, by thinking, is enacting. So once you understand that everything's because at some point in wakefulness, you understand that, okay, the only thing that really matters here is either time or money. And I'm saying the two are inextricably tied, because money is effort. Well, it's effort plus time. But I'm saying if you're trying to deduce what's a good trade, how much effort, it's like, okay, well then your only other missing variable becomes time. And then it's like, okay, we'll then start deducing effort and force. And it's like, okay, well that just comes into resistance, Newtonian physics and everything back again, even though it's what's needed for aerodynamics, aerospace. It's basically understanding what resistance forces is. Particle resistance is so I'm saying, maybe you can change, like, I'm going to say this one part. Maybe you can change, maybe the last thing you need to do is understand scale. Does this thing scale? What's its use case? Does it scale? You get what I'm saying? And is it adjustable? Is it plastic? The elasticity of this, does it jive? You know what I'm saying? So you can have experiments by where you could think about ratios. I was saying earlier, think about we think about brain to body mass ratio, and we're like, wow, humans have a pretty big body mass ratio for the longest time, from our consideration. And I'm saying dolphins were close, bottlenose dolphins were close, and then I'm saying, but what if people are like, well, see, simple size doesn't matter. It's because of the square cube law. Like, you could only get so big. It was the thinking. So it's like, it doesn't matter how big a whale's brain is, because a human is the one building airplanes, not whales, right? You understand that? But it's like, what if you were able to, people have a hard time understanding ratios. So it's like, that's just basically spectrum, thinking in spectra, macro to micro to macro, and then everything in between. So I just heard an echoey dog bark. So, what was I gonna say? That messed me up. Yeah, these dang dogs barking out here, barking up the wrong tree. You get what I'm saying? Okay. Sorry, I go off on tangents a lot. Macro to macro. Have you seen Avengers Infinity War and Endgame? It's like, yeah, if you were to scale yourself up to the size of a whale as a person, as a human being, then like you're just gonna be that much more powerful, because your brain's still way better ratio wise. And if you scale that ratio up, then you just, yeah, that's where the term ratio came from. Ratioed. Urban Dictionary moment. That's what slang is. It's just condensing of language. Because otherwise, there's time. I'm saying, remember once I said, once you understand everything's just a consideration of time, that's your variable, then you have to start learning resistance forces. Air resistance in your physics equations. Stop ignoring that. So you can cheese resistance by scaling, because what we decided was what the variable of time was the speed of light. Speed of light, which was a certain set speed. We just chose that. I don't. Because, look, I guess we misunderstood how things work. Someone chose it. It wasn't me. I'm saying, okay, but when you stretch, because shouldn't a photon, shouldn't light just instantly, from its perspective, instantly approach something, see it as completely flat, because of the extreme speed it's going, from its perspective, sees it as completely as flat. So if a particle of light or a photon was approaching Earth, it would just see it mostly like just a flat disk, but like from an upright perspective, not like some people try to say, oh, it's like the UN flag, like it sees it top down. I say, well, I guess if one did come from the top, it would look. I'm saying every angle you would approach Earth as a photon of light, you would see it as flat. That's how, from their perspective, that's what they would see. But I'm saying, how come from our perspective there's any resistance at all? Why does it take time for it to travel? Well, that's because space is big, obviously, right? And there's stuff in between. So there's this vacuum, if you will. But I say it's a false vacuum, because obviously with enough kinetic energy or potential, you can particles can quantum tunnel through. It's just they either they can sublimate. I don't know if they're sublimating fast or slow, or it's because every single time you try to use electron microscope, there's some, you can't see the quanta at some point because it's too small. I mean, you can, if, well, yeah, okay, you get what I'm saying. And then you also have to understand how light reflects and how we see images upside down until we, it's I forgot who invented this telescope. Like, I was just born here. Okay, anyways, this is what he's saying about lucid dreaming, and it's like, yes, time does, because you're in a, time goes fast. Look, back to the whole time thing. I'm saying it's this, it gets stretched down to like the Planck length around a black hole, the event horizon, and that's what happens at the end of the universe. Everything just keeps expanding until like, it takes light almost infinitely long to reach a location. So everything's just so spread out. It's called the Big Rip because even light isn't fast enough. I'm saying, okay, then just think what's faster than light. I don't know, what's the speed of gravity? Is it the speed of light? Can it go supersonic? What's ionization? You know how they say the Big Bang started from once from everywhere at once? People don't understand that. They're like, okay, think of a balloon and you draw on the outside galaxies and stuff, and then you inflate the balloon, inflation. And then, okay, but what I'm saying is, well, you can draw galaxies on the inside too. In a hypothetical. So I'm saying, where's the distinction? Look, I'm getting all esoteric now, so I'll just read the article. Basically, what you have to understand is, in different dimensions, I think it's based off of how much gravity there is. Because I'm like, well, if gravity can dilate time, as you see in Interstellar, for example, because these are observable effects. You know, if you go in this space station, you're going to be, and you spend any amount of time up there at all, you're going to be, actually, your atomic clock is going to be different than that of someone who's on Earth, because I'm saying that there's time in between the atomic clock. So it'd be like quantum time, I guess. Still particle physics. Still has to do with the periodic table of elements. Anyways, time seems to take longer the higher dimension you're in. That seems to be the trend. So that's how you distinguish between dreaming and wakefulness. How fast is your time going? How fast is your subjective or relative time going? How fast are you experiencing reality? So if, you know, ironically, if it's slow, then you might be awake, right? Because you'd be like, oh, well, the time seems to take a minute to change on the clock, therefore I'm awake. Right? Just as you expect reality to work, right? And then, but apparently if you're asleep, then time doesn't matter. But I'm saying it paradoxically works out the other way on the other end. Because once you realize all these fluctuations and that there's time in between time, then it just becomes a game of scale again. What's your time scale, you know? So I'm saying perception seems to be a faster process than light. Anyways, so lucid dream refers to which they know they are asleep and having a dream. Fans of the fans only. Okay. of the phenomenon say lucid dreams are preferable because they can control what happens in the dream rather than being swept along. They can cause fantastical things to happen, fulfill long-held wishes, if only in fantasy, and avoid nightmares. Many people believe that you can train yourself to have lucid dreams. Yes, yes. But you can also train yourself to stay in what you perceive as wakefulness, where it's like, yes, every 60 seconds a minute passes. Oh no, right? But I'm saying that's inconsequential. But I'm saying that's what we count as wakefulness currently, as a human species, apparently. So I'm saying you can train yourself to never actually need to sleep again and be okay. Just as you can train yourself to lucid dream, you can do the inverse, right? You can even make a mathematical process. Okay. I said, but what if there's something else happening in these dreams? What if your subconscious fights back? That's why the subconscious is quantum. That's why I've been saying for quite some time. It's you being in, and what I call quantum is I call sphered. It's just whatever to the fourth degree. Yeah, it's whatever to the fourth dimension. So as you understand time to the fourth dimension, I guess, it's really fast if you're a second dimensional being, meaning you're sleeping, you're having REM, or you're experiencing dreams. Because apparently there's sectioned processes to sleep. So I would say the fourth dimension presents itself as random access memory. You look at something and then when you don't need that information, it goes away, right? That's how a computer works, right? That's why it's called RAM. So it's this weird. It just pulls from this previous. It works like a cache, right? You understand what I'm saying? Okay. I look. Do you know what RAM sticks are? Okay. Anyways, this is what you're interacting with in your dreams. And it's presenting itself as different information. From where? Well, from an amalgamation of what you've experienced in your life, right? They say you can't dream about anything else than what you've seen, or at least certainly faces. But I'm saying, but what if, because I was having dreams about like an amalgamation of like these different schools and colleges and all this stuff, and I was always trying to like to skip class, you know what I'm saying? And like to just get in my car and go home. I don't know why I kept dreaming about school forever and ever and ever. But, I mean, I think I have one idea why. But, essentially, by having one data set, reality, I was able to produce a completely new scenario or environment and participate in that. So with one reality, you can create another reality. That's what a simulation is. So I'm saying dreaming is just, it's no different from a different reality, because you're not in conscious awareness, really. You're in subconscious awareness, and your consciousness is trying to make sense of it as it's happening. I'm saying your subconscious, training your conscious to realize that your subconscious is quantum, can train your brain to think faster. Because you can be, I don't know what they would call it, more in tune. But I'm saying, yeah, that would be the inverse process. It would be like hacking your circadian rhythm, essentially. Basically, quote unquote, abolishing melatonin from your diet. I'm saying you don't have to, but I'm saying it would theoretically be possible. Because requiring sleep is the marrying of the two processes of being awake and having a time of rest on a certain defined scale. You know how sharks and like a lot of creatures in the sea, I would say, tend to have this system where they can sleep with one hemisphere while the other one is awake. I'm saying you could theoretically train yourself to do that. I'm saying consciousness exists on a scale. I'm saying you could theoretically train a shark AI, a robotic shark, right? That behaves like one in the water. Anyways, yes, by understanding dreams, you can understand consciousness. So every single time I tell people I've demystified consciousness, and they just look at me with a blank stare, or they don't believe me, or it just goes over their head. You know, I don't know what else I need to say. Okay, I've spent enough time going on a tangent about that. Yeah, it says current about lucid dreaming instructs participant when catching themselves in lucid to ask other people in the dream what the time and date is and report back to TikTok what they say. It says the results are pretty creepy. Some people report that dream characters become scared or are scary. They rush to assure the dreamer that time and date isn't important or doesn't exist. In some cases, they band together and fight against the dreamer, like the protective subconscious that formed a large part of the plotline of the film Inception. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I said, I was joking around when I was saying this. I said, if you lose the game, you get, if you understand quantum mechanics, but you can't, the fourth dimension, but you can't get to the fifth dimension, which is understanding that everything is a reaction of gravity, really. Because you know, in an completely empty space, you would look. We're in a false vacuum. In a completely empty space, it just seems like gravitational interactions attracting each other just seems to be king in that scenario. It doesn't matter if there's light, because they could just be two black holes left, right? It doesn't matter if it just seems to be a gravitational thing at that point. Whichever mass has more, it just they seem to fall into each other gravitationally, right? So, well, we can rule the speed of light out for being like too important in that scenario, right? So, because that's an isolated scenario, it exists in a vacuum. You know how when people say that? They say, this doesn't exist in a vacuum. And that's funny. Anyways, I was joking around. I said, if you lose the game, you get you get like Doctor Strange. You get Inception. Like every single time you think you have it, and you still don't understand it, it's like your subconscious trying to pull you back, saying, no, wait, that's not reality. That's not reality. But this is what the investigation of quantum mechanics is. You're thinking way too far out, and you need to like bring yourself back every now and then and center yourself. I'm saying there's a happy medium between that, and that's training both your hemispheres to stay awake the entire time. It's a very hard process, but then you'd be thinking at least like a quantum being. Like they've always hypothesized there's, alien enthusiasts are always like, what if there are higher dimensional aliens and we wouldn't see them? And it's like, okay, define sight. Is it an optical thing for you? Is it just a detection thing for you? Because I'm like, we can detect radio waves, but we can't see them. We can't actually like physically, well, they're a phenomenon that would allow you to, but I'm saying like average every day radio waves, we're just not going to see that. Wi-Fi, we're not going to optically see that with our eyes as human beings. I'm saying, so define sight. These fourth dimensional alien beings, define what it would take to detect them, what your criteria is, right? I'm saying, surely if a higher dimensional being can come into existence, then a lower dimensional being can upgrade into that higher dimensional status, right? I don't understand how that would be a process that would not be possible. So I'm saying perhaps since the prefrontal cortex, the pineal gland or whatever, was in charge of the awareness of identity and self, can have a happy medium with the subconscious to where it can never tire. We could say in a hypothetical thought experiment. But I'm saying that's already possible. Just look at what other species do. And you can apply the same logic to our species and be like, wow, okay, this can actually work. So, people think I'm a little off my rocker, shall I say, for saying, why do I even need to sleep? No, really substantiate that claim. That's what I ask people. Anyways, more onto the article. Okay, which, keep that in mind. It's a joke I made up, but every time you lose, you get Inception, because it's literally true. It's literally true. You're like, wait. That's how it works. That's what tripping is, guys. That's why people walk up to you sometimes. They're like, man, you tripping? You tripping? It's like, snap back to reality. Wake up. Earth to insert name here. Okay. In this video, the man's attempt to ask his dream for the time and date resulted in notably creepy behavior from his dream brother, but also a head full of deafening whispers, as if the overlords of dreaming were suddenly quite concerned that he had become conscious and was starting to question their false reality. The uncanny experiences these dreamers are having is most likely due to mismatch between their conscious mind attempting to impose logic on their dreams and their subconscious, which is currently in charge. Too many chefs in the kitchen. What I'm saying is, for every force, there's an opposite and equal reaction, right? You go back to Newtonian physics. Once you understand that things are just a product of gravity's effect on light, which we define light, the speed of light, as. But I'm saying even black holes defeat light, dude. So I'm saying, like, obviously light's not the fastest thing. I'm saying the spaghettification of light is a process in which light cannot even escape. It's too dense. It's too massive. It's too dense. I'm saying that mass and density seem to win out against light, right? So it's a stronger force. It's by default. You can't argue that. You really can't. I'm saying, but by understanding how light travels, which you may need to understand plasmas and the toruses, because that seems to be like a Ouroboros whole situation with, if you can get something circular, you maybe refer back to string theory. If you can get something circular and you can basically manipulate how wavy it is, then you can pre-predict wherever that torus is going to oscillate to. Use analog computers. Use machines that can detect the waves. I'm saying you might not be able to see it. I'm saying you might need to put some sort of polarizing glasses or something on, because I'm saying it's just like UV sunscreen. It's like you're not going to really see it with your eyes, but once you put a different filter on, then you can see it. It's like black light. That's exactly how it works. So when it's talking about RGB and then CMYK, I believe is the other protocol, it was like it took the absorption into of the light into consideration and made a color model off of that. I'm saying you can do that for many things. I think that's why they started saying Roy G. Biv, because it was the colors of the rainbow. But, you know, if you understand chemical compositions at all, you would know that rainbows would be different under different stars and different atmospheres. And people with, like, different genetics would even see it differently. And I'm saying animals, or like, for example, if you put a toucan in space, what would it see? Probably a reality very different from you, for sure. So it says the uncanny experiences these dreamers are having is most likely due to the mismatch between their conscious mind. Yeah. Too many chefs in the kitchen. Is that it? Right. Good thing I talked as long as I did that. How often do you have lucid dreams? It's really situational for me. In the event that I actually ever do fall asleep really and have a dream, for a while I was having like a lot of school dreams. You get what I'm saying? And then I was having a lot of dreams trying to find my car. You know what I'm saying? And then I was having dreams where once I understood quantum mechanics and, like, you know, I was really happy with my life and all that, but no one would believe me. I started having all these dreams where I just started, like, gathering up all these people and, like, using portals and technology to like smuggle them across space-time. And then when I wake up, I would be like on Earth again, you know, just in regular reality. I was like, oh, okay, that was a nice dream. I'm sure that means something, though. You know what I'm saying? You know, back in the day, some in between some time period, some ancient Greece, ancient Rome time period. See, the thing is, the Roman Empire lasted for quite some time, so it's just like a whole chunk of history, shall we say. I'm saying Nero unwittingly tied time to money in that instance. Well, I'm saying from his perspective. So I'm saying that's perhaps why the Julian calendar would be different from the Gregorian calendar, which is why I believe a lot of people just accept the Gregorian calendar. I like to joke about which country was it that there was a February 30th, and then some others just took, like, what was it, 10 or 13 days out of their calendar. Everyone had to adjust, basically, because everyone agreed on a new time. And I'm saying I think that's the same situation here, because it's like time, which, as we measured it, was just a measure of gravity. So everything is really a consideration of time dilation, and it keeps going back to that every single time. So I'm saying it's pretty much non-Euclidean for now, because like no one has realized that on a high enough scale to. I'm saying people realize it, but it hasn't had quite enough definition yet. Let me put it that way.